Well, hello, everyone, and welcome to today's webinar on the Vertical IQ Industry Research Platform. Our presenters for today are Bobby Martin and Jim Ewart, who I will introduce shortly. My name is Andy DeZamba, and I'm the executive editor here at BVR. Your attendance here today is eligible for one CPE credit. To receive the credit, you must complete and submit a brief survey on today's webinar at the end of our presentation. The survey will appear at the end of the program, and you need you need to fill in a CE code on the survey. The CE code is up on the screen now, and it's 2510. Again, that code is 2510. Jot that down. You'll need that later, and we'll announce it at the end of the program as well. If you have any question for our presenters, please use the Q&A function on your screen. And if you have any technical trouble, use the chat function, and we'll help you right out. Well, we're very happy to have our presenters back with us today. Bobby Martin is a co-founder of Vertical IQ, which provides industry intelligence on small and medium-sized businesses. Mr. Martin serves as CEO of the firm, and he had a background as a financial professional before turning to research. He was a co-founder of First Research, which provides industry and state profiles. Jim Ewart is the owner of a forensic and valuation practice based in Charleston, South Carolina. He is the former leader of the valuation practice at Dixon Hughes Goodman, and he's got extensive experience in the valuation of closely held and family-owned businesses, and he has provided expert testimony in family, state, and district courts. You can read their full bios on the webpage for today's event. And with that, I'll turn the program over to our presenters, Bobby Martin.
Hi there. Thank you, everybody. And thank you to BVR for hosting this event. Being the leader in business valuations, we're very honored to be one of the partners with BVR and providing industry intelligence to you so that you can make your business valuations reports more efficient, but also add value in client relationships. And so what we're going to do today in this presentation is it's going to have a rather interesting flow to it. What I'd like to do at the beginning is walk through, as you can see, there's actually 51 slides. And you might be thinking, oh my gosh, we're going to get death by PowerPoint. But actually what I'm going to do is pretty much fly through these slides. I'm going to move quite quickly. And I'm going to present to you how to become a better value-added advisors leveraging industry intelligence. So we're going to walk through how that exactly works. And then it's going to be neat after that. We're going to do a demonstration of Vertical IQ, and Jim is going to come in quite a bit and provide expertise on how his firm uses industry intelligence to improve the reports, to improve the way they go about working with their clients, and much more specific information. But for now, hopefully this very quick 15-minute or so presentation will really level set what it means to be a value-added advisor and why that's important. Jim, do you have anything to add before we get started?
No, not at all, Bobby.
Okay, sounds good. So let's dive in. I want to start with a quick poll question for you. And, do your clients consider you a value-added advisor? So go ahead and answer that question. We'll talk about the results here in a second. Okay, very good. So to see the results of the poll, I guess, Jim, do you know where I click to? I was just showed this yesterday.
Yeah, Bobby, if you just on the chat panel, if you want to click polls and then the open area.
Open, yes, indeed. Okay, thank you. The magic word was open. So here are the results. 64% said yes, a vast majority of the time they see me this way. 28% answered occasionally from time to time I get motivated and seem to really help my clients beyond just the written report itself. Only 3 said infrequently, and only 2 said almost never. I do think because of the nature of a business valuation expert, you are seen as a value-added advisor right from the start. I mean, they're obviously paying you a lot of money to understand something rather technical and difficult to perform, and it's an expertise. So they see you that way. However, there's a way to separate yourself from the other business valuators, which is going to be the main focus of the next few slides. I guess the first quick run through is why it's important to be a value-added advisor. What does that look like? Well, you're going to surprise clients. They're going to see that you take their job seriously. They're different from trusted advisors. You hear that word a lot, trusted advisors. Trusted is a slightly different thing. To my mind, trusted means they feel comfortable that you're not going to do something bad to them or that it's going to be a good outcome. Value added means that you take it to a whole nother level. Okay. Value added advisors care about detail. They connect with their clients through their industry. What's their motivation? Like, why be a value-added advisor? Well, first is referrals. If you're perceived, it's not just a business valuator who just does their job, then they're not necessarily going to go refer you to others. However, if you go above and beyond, you take it to another level, you're going to get referrals. You're going to get premium fees, and you're going to be helpful, and that's a whole lot more satisfying. And Jim, I don't know if you have anything to add here along the way.
Well, no, I think that's just very critical to what we do is trying to provide additional work. I did a seminar on this about a month ago, I believe, on exit planning, and this is where I tie a lot of what we're talking about right now into the overall valuation process. This is a great time to be able to identify what those drivers are and talk through those. And you've got a platform that's very helpful in doing that.
That's right. Yes. And so we'll get to the platform in a second, but you're absolutely right. And I think exit planning is a perfect example of how evaluators can be value added, instead of just, you need a value for your business. Here it is. Okay. Instead, this is a 3 to 5 year process. What are the main drivers that make it successful? Great point. Okay. What do value added advisors, what are some of the things that they bring to the table? A strategic mindset. Okay. And so in other words, again, they're thinking out in front of what is needed. They align with their client objectives and they provide useful advice. So here's a couple of examples of each of those. Strategic mindset tends to be industry specific, understanding the customer's business, bringing thoughtful ideas to break down main challenges they have, alignment with their objectives. What do they really care about? That comes from great questions. And then, of course, the useful advice is absolutely key. And maybe it's beyond just the value of their business. Maybe it's things that you see other businesses doing. So, and you can see the process, what's that process for building advice? Well, one is you do industry research pre-call preparation. You ask engaging questions, and then you consider very carefully what their answers are and do even more research to provide answers and advice. Anything here, Jim?
No, those not to belabor this point, but that pre-meeting and meeting are critical to this whole process.
That's right. Pre-call preparation, right? Okay, very good. What about the conversations with clients? Should they only be about the value, or should they be about the competitors, the strategy, the customers, the market trends, the regulators, or the regulations inherent in that particular industry? So these are the type of conversations value-added advisors have. And you can see some of these engaging questions about those topics to draw out the business owner's true vision, help them understand alternative ideas, and improve their exit plan. Instead of just saying, okay, what is your vision for the exit plan? You find out what it is from them. Instead, you formulate it together. But the best way to get there is just a bunch of engaging questions and understanding of how it all works. A few other keys to thoughtful questions. Industry specific as possible. Answers should lead to follow-up questions, and the tone should offer an innate curiosity. Okay. So these are just a couple of tips on the questions. Here's just a quick example. This is just a machine shop. Let's say you haven't worked with a machine shop in years, or if you have never worked with a machine shop. As you can see, through your pre-call preparation, you understand the types of things you want to get to the bottom of for this particular type of business. You know, how critical skilled labor is to them, on how machinery parts change and that type of thing. So how does that affect their business? Have you invested in modern machinery and replacement parts? You know, so that's kind of like specifically what I'm talking about, if you will. Here's some other questions. Here's example for like a brewery owner. Let's say you're calling on a brewery. You're going to be meeting with them, and they're considering an exit for the strategy for the future. And you can see the pre-meeting as you're learning about breweries and their capacity utilization and how important that is. You're discussing capacity utilization at the meeting, and then you're learning how that affects the valuation, and then you're returning with additional insight that affects the actual valuation. So that's another specific example. Any comments there, Jim?
No, I think the points that you're making here, I think are things that we would typically undertake prior to the first meeting with the client. And it depends. Certainly, if it's a new client, if it's one that we've had previous engagements for, we have gotten some of the basic information, but it's still important to maintain that perception of industry knowledge, that you've taken the time to stay up to date with what's going on with their industry, what's current, and having that discussion with them as part of this process. Because if we rely just on what we've done before, our work will demonstrate that we haven't really done a very good job, but they're also going to perceive that maybe we're not doing a very good job as well. So your points are well made.
Yeah, like you meet with a brewery and you don't even know what capacity utilization barely is. It's a little difficult to be a value-added advisor and provide a valuation report that's really tight and really well thought out, I think.
Yeah.
But obviously, one of the big points of this webinar is getting to the industry research, so you can learn how to sift through the industry research in a very efficient way. So we'll get to that in a few minutes.
I can give you a pretty, a current example I've had, and this is with a distributor of spirits and wines and beers. And my pre-research or my research prior to the first meeting was, I was learning that that COVID's had the supply chain backup has had a pretty devastating effect on wines, and particularly importing them and getting them and having them available for when their customers need them. And so I started that discussion and saying, well, I suspect you're having trouble with the wines, and this person just launched into how they had foreseen that risk and what they had done and spent a boatload of money stockpiling, and as a result, it won them over a bunch of new clients and customers because they had supply where others didn't. So it was a great lead.
Yeah, I think that's a perfect example. And if you hadn't have asked about that, then you wouldn't have gotten into that deep discussion. And my guess is if they meet with another evaluator and they say, we're going to meet with 2 or maybe 3 evaluators to see who might be the best company to work with to help us with this in consulting engagement, whether it's an exit strategy or an actual valuation, the one that engages on the things they care about the most is the one they're probably going to select.
Mm-hmm.
So that's a really good example. Sure. So I'll fly through a couple other tips and best practices. These are just simply questions you could ask the beer company, but we're going to show you that in the product. This is an example for a grocery store. Maybe you haven't met with an independent grocery store in a while. You realize that internet shopping is a major trend and that a higher percentage of revenue is going into that. So you discuss that. You learn what the impact is going to be on the valuation, and you return with additional insight. So that's just another example. We get a little more into the industry knowledge now. So let's just ask another poll question very quickly is, do you leverage industry intelligence with clients beyond just putting the data or the content into your valuation report? Or do you use it in other ways too? Looks like results are still coming in. A couple more. So 34% of you said, yes, I frequently share industry intelligence with clients. 34. 61% said occasionally from time to time, I share and discuss kind of some of the stuff like we're talking about. And then only 3% said, no, discussing a client's industry is new to me. So it looks like the majority of you use this best practice occasionally. And I would encourage you to do it more often, but we will press on. Thank you. How to leverage industry intelligence. Okay, to be a little more specific, and of course, this is outside the valuation report, which we're going to talk about as well here in a few minutes. But one that we've already discussed is meeting preparation, client shareable research. So maybe you give them free industry research as part of their report or outside of their report, or industry specialization, so that you become an expert in, say, half a dozen industries. And Jim, do you have any industry specializations, or are you just pure generalist, or do you frequently do a particular type of business?
Well, I do a fair amount of across the board, but it seems like I tend to gravitate back towards specialized medical practices.
Okay. Like orthopedist or cardiologist, or?
Well, it would be like plastic surgery,
right?
Surgery centers, those kinds of things, as opposed to the actual practices themselves.
Got it. Do you get it? Why did that occur? Did it occur because you started getting referrals in that particular industry?
Well, yeah, it just happened along the way where I was involved with a pretty successful surgery practice, plastic surgery practice, and helped them as far as their growth strategy and those kinds of things. And so from time to time, they'll talk at a cocktail party and mention my name, and from time to time, I'll get people calling up and asking about it. So
makes sense. And I guess one of the things I'm encouraging the listeners to do is, to try to get 3, 4, 5 specializations. But you can also be a generalist. So you can be a generalist plus have some specializations, and industry research is a good way to figure out what those specializations might be. And I'll show you within Vertical IQ how you can kind of figure out what might be a good specialization for your particular area. Okay. This is just sort of how to go about industry research is one is to find the time to do it. Jim, do you ever struggle with that? It's like, well, I don't really have time to prepare for this particular meeting. Or how do you go about finding time?
I'd like to say that I actually plan it out, but I don't. It depends on what's pressing. But I'd like to think that when I attend a meeting, I'm prepared for it.
Right. Yeah, that's it. And you can see these are just a few examples that distract you from having the time to do that. But here are just a couple of ideas. Have the tools and resources at your fingertips. Create a calendar event 30 minutes prior to a meeting, anytime prior to it, and then prepare for the meetings each day. Or another idea is prepare for all your meetings at 8 a.m. that you have that particular day, or create a calendar event each Monday for the calls for that week. These are just a couple of best practices you could consider, especially if you struggle with it naturally. Another how to research an industry is online research, trade association websites, 10K and S1 public filings have excellent industry research. Of course, industry experts say, do I know anybody who's in this industry? Who can I talk to that knows a lot about this industry? And it doesn't have to be a business owner. It could be an accountant or somebody who may have clients in the industry. Industry research subscriptions like Vertical IQ, which we're going to show you in a few minutes. And Jim, do you have any others you'd like to add? Any other ways you research industries?
No, those are the ones.
Okay, very good.
For me, anyway.
Right. How to leverage industry financial data. So now we're getting a little more into financial type information. So just remember that most companies, the size, they're small and medium sized companies, they lack someone who knows a lot about finance, access to capital, cash flow. And that should say CFO, not CMO. That should say CFO. Okay. So what I'm saying is some of the businesses you may work with have controllers, but no CFO. So therefore, if you're up the funnel providing industry data that's pretty deep, maybe the controller doesn't know that, but you do. So it's a quick way to add value. This is just a couple of questions you could ask that brewery we were using before that are financially driven questions. Okay. So when you're doing your pre-call prep, maybe some of the questions are financial oriented. These are financial statistics that many industry research providers such as Vertical IQ provide. And they have the statistics average for that particular industry, and you can compare it to your client to see how they compare. Do you ever use this best practice, Jim?
Yeah, always. I find this helpful if we can get some information in advance, financial information in advance. That's one thing particularly I like about your platform is that you've got that little box in the abbreviated version where this sits out right there, and you can plug in the company info, and you've got some pretty straightforward reliables right there comparables that you can rely on, and that's part of your conversations.
That's right. And so we'll show that to you when Jim and I are walking through the platform. You'll be able to see that box he's talking about. It just uploads straight to Excel. Sort of how to industry specialize. I guess I would like to ask a quick poll question is, how many of you do specialize in a particular industry? Let's get a feel for that. Okay. They're coming in. Okay. Only 5% of you mainly work with one industry. 21% mainly work with 2 to 5 industries, and 75% say no, I'm a generalist and have very little or no industry specialization. Okay. So that's interesting. Makes sense. So maybe some of the 73, 75% may consider specializing a little bit. These are just a couple of best practices. Industries who have a propensity for valuation needs, industries that already have traction, industries are prevalent in your area, or industries who don't already have intense competition. Um, Tips for industry specialization. These are just a couple of best practices. Yeah, one of the big things is the best way to know is to try. It's like you can do all the research in the world, but the best thing is just go give it a shot. Money is the truth machine. You won't know until you go try. Yeah. So wrapping up my presentation, this is just a couple of challenges for you. How might you change your firm? Are you considering being a value-added advisor expert? And if it's something standing in the way, what's standing in your way? You're too strapped for time. It's changed too difficult. Industry-specific content is difficult to find. Maybe there's a way for you to mitigate these things and become a better valuator. How to go about building these systems at your firm? Well, you need systems in place, and you also need autonomy. So it's kind of like both a science and an art to do this, I think, best. And Jim, I don't know if you have, like at your firm, I don't know if you use any systems or processes, or does it just come naturally for you? Is it more of an art or is it more of a science?
To me, I think it's more of an art than a science.
Yeah.
I think there's a lot of science attached to it, but I think it's more of an art. We do have a question here too, Bobby, if you'd like to handle it. It says, "Did the reports provide an analysis of Michael Porter's 5 forces?"
Yes, they do. And so it's great timing because I'm getting ready to switch and show you something very similar to the Porter 5 forces, if it's not the exact. That's one of the first chapters in every industry we provide. Okay. Good question, Jay Claywell. So thanks for alerting me to that. Are you willing to change status, or are you willing to try one or two of these methods in your company? And then let's do the demonstration, but I do want to provide you very quickly just a couple of things before we dive into the platform of Vertical IQ. First is, where do we get our content? This is very important to know. We write a lot of our content ourselves. We do license some content as well. These are a few of the logos where we get this content. You can see some of it's licensed, some of it's government data. Census is very used a lot, Federal Reserve. We talk to industry experts a lot. We get a lot of financial data, Bureau of Labor Statistics, USDA, you name it. And of course, this is just a few of the logos where we get our content. But when I'm walking through it, I'll point out where a lot of this content does come from. Okay. The other thing you want to know up front before we dive into the demonstration is our updating schedule. People say, how often is this content updated? The short answer is, as frequently as things change. But if Bureau of Labor Statistics reports every month, then that data is every month. If census is once a year for that particular type of information, then it's once a year. If RMA financial statistics come out once a year, which they do, then that's once a year. We constantly write new content about the industries. So every month we provide a COVID update. And that means, how is COVID affecting this industry right now? We do that every month. But then I listed some other things here where you just get an idea of how often content's updated. And Jim, I would imagine that the currency, or how often the information is updating, is probably very important to you, isn't it?
Well, as we talk, when I first started looking at Vertical IQ, one of the questions I had for you is, what's the sources of your information and how often do you update it? That's very important to us. So I'm glad you covered it. from
Yeah,
here.
and Jim asked me to do this, and that's because he knows he uses it in his practice every day, and he has a feel for what's important. And so we are going to point out where this data comes from as we walk through it. While I'm on the presentation, if you wanted to sign up for Vertical IQ after you check this out, how would you do that? Would you come to Vertical IQ? No, you just go straight to BVR. They can take care of everything, and they're geared up to answer your specific valuation question. Okay, so that's easy. And before we do the Q&A, well, if anybody does have any questions, as Jim pointed out, you can use the chat or the Q&A button and ask questions as we go, but we'll also have a few minutes at the end.
And we won't share your names either. We promise that from now on.
Yeah, I did that. I apologize. Probably got somebody in trouble, but I doubt it. Good point, Jim.
It was a good question. So
It was a good question. You're right. Very good. So let me share my screen. Jim, can you see my screen now?
I can.
Wonderful. So this is Vertical IQ's platform. And this is after you've logged in. You can see there's a top navigation here. And there are a few things I want to point out. Home is where the industry research is. So all the industry stuff is here. We have news, which is just a lot of news about things that are happening to small and medium-sized businesses and also industries. It's like a platform for news. We have local economies, which I do want to take a minute to show you very powerful data that's going to help your valuation report, because that data is very frequently updated. We cover 3,500 counties across the United States and 375 MSAs, our cities. Sort and target's a way to organize the industries, and then we have a resource center. Okay, so most people come to Vertical IQ and they just want to find their industry, and they can just search by keyword. They can search by NAICS code or SIC code. They can also click on categories. We have 300 and nearly 375 industry profiles, full profiles. Then we have nearly 200 niche profiles. It's kind of like Jim was talking about within the medical space. He specializes in a lot of specialties within medical. And so if we go to like physicians practices, you can see all the types of physicians we cover under those. These are a little bit shorter. They're called niche profiles because they're not really industries. According to the government, they're not industries. So there's not a lot of data about them, but we still write about them. Okay. There's 200 of those. So this is a list of profiles here by main category. A lot of people, they say, oh, I know this isn't in healthcare, and they can just quickly go here and look for the one that they want to see. So I could pick any of these industries. Jim, is there one you would like for me to click on for people to see?
Oh, yeah, right. Have at it.
Okay, sure. I heard you mention surgery centers. Why don't we do surgery center, ambulatory surgery center? My next door neighbor is an orthopedic surgeon, and their practice owns one of these. So it's kind of neat. And so I just clicked on this one. Could have clicked on any of the 375 of them. They're all organized the exact same way. So they're all very clean and like that. What you see first when you click on an industry profile is a dashboard. And what this is like just an executive summary. It's like if there was a novel, this is nothing more than the summary is the back of the book, where you just get a good feel. If you just have a few minutes about surgery centers, you know how many there are, and you know their main issue is dependence upon insurers and legislative targets physician-owned centers. So you know these are two big topics going on in this industry. There's an industry brief that I could click on. It's just a PDF of 3 pages of summary. And then there's a working capital wheel, which if I toggle over this, I learn how surgery centers sell an invoice, how they collect money from their clients, how they manage cash, how they pay money, what money goes out the door and for what, and some of the KPIs or key performance indicators that are common in this industry as a summary. Jim, you use this a good bit, don't you?
Yeah, I find that just really helpful. I'm a slow learner, so you know, those kinds of help functions just really just help me. Just
Yeah.
it's concise. No, you need to dive a bit deeper for sure, but nonetheless, it gives you just a quick overview of what's going on with it.
That's right. And I'll show you how you can dive deeper too. But this is, you can see, generally need 2,000 or more cases per year, to be profitable. So these tidbits, you can see there's some videos you can watch. There's an interview. So if I clicked on this, you can see an interview video. There's some tools you can use like emails and that kind of thing. There's a call prep sheet. There's some financial comparisons here. So you can learn that they tend to be very profitable. The revenue growth is really good. The green, of course, means good in the higher end, pretty cash intense. Just average inventory intensity, pretty labor intense and very capital intense. Here are some news, some things that are happening in this particular industry that are a wonderful best practices. If I click on this Wall Street Journal article, then maybe I could use this to share it with my client, maybe print it, take it to the call, or maybe it's a good follow-up a couple of weeks later. Hey, I read this and I was thinking about you. Mm-hmm. Do you ever look at the news in Vertical IQ, Jim?
Yeah, I do. Again, I scan it. One thing I didn't want to overlook when you looked at the tools up just a little bit on that screen, the call prep sheet.
Yeah.
I hope you're going to spend just a little bit of time in there or at least show it because
Sure.
it's got some really good information in it that is kind of leads you through what's important, what's not, and where you might want to focus.
Well, you're right. This is the perfect piece of content if you're running out the door. You click on print the call prep sheet, it prints to one page and off you go. As you say, it's just got the working capital right here in front of you, the structure for the industry, and then something that's happened very recently to talk about, and then a quick forecast and some call prep questions.
Mm-hmm. And your prep questions too are good. Those ones at the end, they typically are pretty much spot on. It's things we would typically talk about, but I just find it always good to get reminded. Again, like I said, I forget more than I learn, so it's easier to have these before me to jog my memory.
Well, I'm glad you brought it up that way, because I often tell people that Vertical IQ reminds you of content you already know. It's like, yeah, of course I know that, but it reminds you that you know that. So what is your mix of procedures by medical area? I mean, what a good question, like a very basic question, but a good one. Or what is your mix of payers, right? And again, these are what first type meetings, right? Like these are early call prep questions, probably.
Yeah, right.
I'm glad you brought up the call prep sheet there. Okay, so this is just the dashboard. Let's click on the full profile. Somebody asked about the porters. This is like the porters. It's not quite the same, but it's close. It has the suppliers. Who are the major suppliers? Who are the new entrants? And where do they come from? And then the buyers, who are the customers, substitutes, and then of course right at the center is how many companies. So this is kind of like just a quick way to look at the industry, right? And then you can see some of the demographics of the industry, the number of companies, and number of people that are employed. The typical location generates $7 million in revenue with 35 workers. Breaks down some of the types of companies.
Excuse me, Bob, we got a couple really good questions.
Fire away, please.
So let's just go ahead and take them. The first one is, how does Vertical IQ differ from competing products such as IBIS World?
Sure. I'll answer that, and then I'll let you answer it as well. In fact, why don't you start with that, Jim, if you don't mind, because you probably have a better answer than me.
Well,
Because I
no,
know
yeah, I
Yeah.
think it's important for you I find your stuff very easy to go through. I like its hints and I like the structure of it, but I'd like to hear your answer.
Yeah, sure. Well, broadly speaking, as far as our competitors go, we believe our industry research is very much from the small and medium-sized business perspective. We try to make it very easy to read, very easy to use, very pithy information. We also license a lot of data where a lot of our competitors don't license data. For example, industry news, we have a partnership coming out with LexisNexis very soon, financial statistics, valuation statistics, and we leverage that content for the benefit of our users, of course. And we also have a mobile app, and I don't believe our competitors have mobile apps. And so that you can if you have a login to Vertical IQ, then you download the app and you log in, and you can have it right there at your fingertips. But one other thing I'll say that we have is that deep information about local economies. And so I'll show you an example of that our competitors don't have. So that's just a few of the things.
Let's keep going with these for just quick, Bobby. How about international content? We talked about this early on as well. This specific question relates to Canadian, whether there's Canadian content.
Yeah, so starting with the Canadian content, we have a Canadian specific site. Of course, I'm on the US site at the moment. So for our Canadian users, they have access to Canadian specific data. Now, we don't have quite the depth in Canada than we do in the US, but you can see right here, this version of the platforms, part of the reason I brought it up, this version, you can see the Canadian market. And if I click on the Canadian market, you can see this is all Canadian specific content here. And it goes through, the quick facts, the risks in Canada, trends in Canada, call prep questions, etc. And then we have Canadian specific news as well. So this is news coming straight from Canada.
Yeah.
So
that wasn't a plant question either. That was a legitimate question from those that are on here. The other is First Research. Can you distinguish between your product and First Research as well?
Sure. Well, I actually founded First Research back in 1999. It was merged in with Dun & Bradstreet in 2007. I think that First Research is mainly used in a tool called Hoover's, I believe. And, again, the platform hasn't changed a whole lot since I was gone that I know of. Of course, I don't have access, nor do I want access to First Research. But I believe that Vertical IQ's put so much time and energy and diligence into modernizing the platform that we have a real leg up on our competitors from that vantage point. But again, it's I think First Research is mostly an industry report, whereas ours is more you toggle between the information you want, and their information is not as localized as ours as well.
Yeah, although when you touch on the local, you can really extract that, and it's really good information for our reports, by the way. Last question that's tied to this is, what about industry complements? I'm not quite sure what that means.
Industry complements.
Yeah.
Maybe content that's complemented by our information. I'm not sure. Ask if that person would clarify their question. That'd be great.
Yeah.
I think we can answer it more effectively.
That'd be helpful. Yeah. Okay. Great. Those are all our questions at this point, Bobby.
Great. Thank you for letting me know about the questions, because I can't see them because I'm on my screen. So if more questions pop up, please just interrupt me and let me know.
Okay. So the person came back with 6 forces.
Not Porter's 6 forces, but
I don't know. Maybe they could
SWOT.
really.
Maybe it's the SWOT analysis: strengths, weaknesses.
It could be. Yeah, it could be.
Yep. And we accomplish that, but it's done more in depth than just a diagram. But
Yeah,
the
no,
main diagram we have is the one you were just looking at, which is this diagram. So we don't have a traditional SWOT analysis, but yeah, keep them coming.
okay.
And I'll just keep doing the demonstration as they come so that people can see the rest of the content. The coronavirus update I mentioned every month. We're adding a monthly update to how this particular industry is being affected. And you can see here, elective surgeries may increase. Very popular chapter. If I go to how firms operate, what's
We
that?
were just told by this person to look it up on the internet, which I will do.
Oh, okay, thanks.
So the last question is, how about average industry leverage information?
Yes. So average leverage would be on the financial statistics.
Yeah,
So if I
right.
go to these benchmarks here,
Yep.
financial benchmarks, we go here, and then we go down to total liabilities to net worth. We know that, yeah, this industry is about 1 to 1.
Yeah.
Well, that's just, and then of course we also go into the financials in a good bit of depth here, where we get into cash flow challenges and deep analysis of the financials.
Yeah. Good.
But I'm going to go back to how firms operate. And you
Bobby,
can see,
just to keep us, we've got about 10 minutes left.
sure,
And I know we're going to continue to have questions.
perfect.
And this person's not giving up. He's really trying to get us to understand them, and I apologize.
Gentlemen, it's Andy here. Don't feel free to go overtime a little bit. We're not on a hard stop here.
Okay.
Okay,
I just wanted to give you a heads up there on that, Bobby.
sure.
Okay,
And did
great.
you have a follow-up question?
I think the person's now saying that it's opposite of substitutes.
Mm-hmm.
So if we had them all brought back together, we could maybe piece it together and get what he's focused on. I apologize. I'm just getting blanks here.
Yeah. Okay, no problem.
Although he
at
is
all.
giving you the benefit of the doubt, he's now saying, "I bet you have this in the information." So let's go with that. You do.
All right, that sounds good. Well, I think this particular chapter is important because it goes into a fair amount of depth on how these particular types of business go about their business. Who do they buy from? Who do they sell to? How do they add value in the relationships that they have? And you can see how revenue breaks down for ambulatory surgery centers. You can see some of this in-depth information about how they're run, revenue per employee, and then profit drivers. And Jim and I were talking yesterday that this is the type of content that could be very useful in the valuation report, right, Jim? Just like what makes these companies profitable? If you want to get better and grow these types of businesses, what does it take to do it?
Well, this is just again, these are just really good points that now if you work in this area, you're going to have an understanding of these.
That's right.
But again, it's we're talking about now, beforehand prep, but then we're also talking about, okay, what can we also put in our reports that's valuable? And as I understand it, we're able to take this information as long as we attribute it to where we get it. We're able to do that. So I just find it. I know I sound like I'm really selling this thing. I just really like the way it lays out. I like the ease of use, and I like its practical impact. So,
right. Well, yeah. Thanks for saying that, Jim. And I would imagine that from time to time, I shouldn't speculate, but you could just take this content like this and cut and paste it into the appendix in a valuation report and provide proper attribution to vertical IQ and say, here are the main things, the main drivers for this particular industry or your business, and verify it with them. Is that a good best practice?
it works for me.
Yeah,
Yeah.
sure.
So we've got a great
Thanks,
question here. It's a really good question.
sure.
Are archived reports available as of evaluation date, or are reports only viewable as of the latest update?
Yes, archive reports are available for BVR customers. Where they would be located is right here. When I logged in because I wanted you to see the Canada information. But right here, there's a additional information on every report, and it says archived reports, and you click on it, and you can see the old reports and click on them as of a particular date. I'm glad you brought that up because that's important. Mm-hmm. It only goes back about, I think, 2 or 3 years, if I'm not mistaken. But
Yeah,
of course, every month they get more and more build up. So,
yeah.
um, industry trends, these are, of course, what they are. Joint ventures with hospitals, industry growth is slowing, digital procedures receive coverage. These are things that are great call preparation discussion points. I was talking about that value added. That's what these are the type of things you should bring up in your meetings. The employment and wage trends, as you can see, employment's grown quite a bit over the last 10 years. And the wages are growing. They were coming down. They were becoming more and more efficient per hour. And now they've, of course, gone up quite a bit, mainly because of the influence of COVID, I think. Now, this is a very important chapter, I think, for Jim that I should bring up, especially some of the things I'm going to show you right below here. But this is a risk rating. So this is kind of the risk for this particular industry, more or less in terms of lending to it as opposed to investing, but it's still relevant to investing. And what it does is it says, essentially it answers the questions, how risky is this industry? And this industry is not very risky. It's a 3.3 on a 10-point scale. Why? Because of these reasons right here. All industries have the same 6 benchmarks. Their failure rates or exit rates, their cyclicality, barriers to entry. By the way, high barriers to entry is a good thing. Industry risk, industry outlook, and financial summary. Very high margins, high liquidity, low leverage. I would say that's pretty doggone good. So you can see that scored very well.
I don't know about the audience, but I like pictures, and
Yeah.
I particularly like. I don't like to fill my reports with pictures, but I do like to put pictures in my report, and this is one that I kind of like.
Right. And the easy way to do that is you take a screenshot, like I'll show you how. I could go like this, and now I've got my screenshot, and it's now a file on my computer, and I can just drop it into
Mm-hmm.
I can drop it into the presentation. And of course, the contract with Vertical IQ does allow you to share the content with your client. So not on a wholesale basis, but on a one-on-one basis.
Yeah.
Key
All right.
metrics.
So we got a couple more quickies here. One
Okay.
question is, and I think this person just missed it, because I think I can answer this one. It says, sorry if I missed this earlier, but are you able to search industries by commonly used NICEs and SIC codes? And the answer to that is yes.
Yes.
And then there's another question, is data provided on key industry ratios and valuation benchmarking? I think the answer to that is yes, too. And I think maybe we went through that a little maybe too quick, and maybe you can show it now.
Yeah, I'll show both. This is the valuation data that, of course, comes from BVR, comes from their deal stats. It is an executive summary of the benchmarks, of course. To get the actual transactions, you need to go to deal stats and BVR to get those. But what we do offer is, of course, a summary based on these transactions. And you can see price to EBIT is the median is 9.3. Price to
Now
sales.
that would be all transactions in this case ambulatory surgery centers in deal stats. You don't distinguish between stock or asset purchases, nor do you distinguish between time frame.
Yeah, that you are correct, except the time frame is a very broad, long time frame.
Yeah, right, right,
You can
right.
see. So this is just to get you a general idea.
Yeah, yeah. No, I wasn't being critical. I just wanted to make it clear that it's all data
Yeah.
that's in GeoStats. That's all.
Yeah. And I was just making it clear actually to the listeners that they shouldn't come here to rely fully. They should go to BVR
Yes.
because it's just a summary.
Right.
That's right. And you asked about the financial benchmarks. Here they are. This data is provided by RMA and Powerlytics because we use Powerlytics to break down the income statement even more precise. But notice you can break these down by size of the company. So right here, show industry-wide. These are all surgery centers ratios. Or I can go to small, medium, or large and update it. Or I can look at the values or the percentages. And I can download it to CV, to an Excel file, essentially. If I scroll down, I can show you some of the ratios, all the common ones that you're used to seeing: return on revenue, interest coverage, the leverage. And then here's the income statement, gross margins, rent, repairs, EBITDA, income tax, etc.
Now, those dates that are on there, Bobby, those are the RMA dates, or what dates? What dates are those?
These are the RMA dates. That's right.
Okay.
So that's right. So the new ones will be coming out very soon for 20 and 21 be coming out soon.
So that's their published data date.
Correct.
Right.
This is consistent with RMA. That's right.
Right. Okay.
Because their cutoff is like March, but
Right.
I think they're the most reliable in the sense that they get all financial statistics from banks, and so the banks upload the financial statements straight from the clients. So you're getting really good data. You can see this is a lot of firms too.
Mm-hmm.
255 firms, the latest one. So the balance sheet as well. So that's the financial statistics. And then also, speaking of financial statistics, I was about to show you, this is what Jim was talking about. You just put your clients' ratios in here. And if theirs is like, 56%, and you go here to operating margin, theirs is, 12%, whatever it is. And you can add a comment here, add your comments, and then you simply upload it to Excel. Oh gosh, I got to plug my computer in. I realize it's using a lot of, I had a full charge. It's using a lot. I don't want to get kicked off, that's for sure.
Yeah.
Because I do want to show you all that local economic data as well. But
Yeah.
Let's keep going. Oh, and then we have some underwriting questions. And then these are the risks of the industry. This is really key as well. What are the risks with operating one of these industries? Do you use this any, Jim?
Yeah. Again, this is just real good for our write-ups. And if you don't want to put it in your reports, you can put it in the back of your report as opposed to in the body. But it's still good to have in the work. And if you don't want to put it in at all, it just helps document decisions along the way.
Sure.
That little box, I like to, depends on what I'm doing. Often, we do a fair amount of exit planning work, and it's good to be able to show on a, fairly straightforward basis, that little chart with some comments beside it, which generates some pretty good talking points as well. But you can also use it to help justify, some other decisions you're making in your in the valuation process.
Thank you, Jim. Y'all have to forgive me. I went over to the plug that was right beside me. My computer, it kept falling out of it. So I'm going to use this one. Voila. Let's take a look at some of this local. Y'all can still hear me, right?
Yep.
Good. there is some quarterly insight data and some other things, but if we printed this report, it would come to about 30 or 40 pages of content. So it's a lot of content, but it's organized in a really easy to digest fashion. But let's look at this economic data, this local data. So if I go here, I can go by state, and I can, you choose your state wherever you are, North Carolina. So I could go here and you can see the counties. So if you happen to live in Jones County, then you have all this economic data about your county here. But I'm in Raleigh, so I'm just going to go to Raleigh-Cary because the counties, you can see the cities have that little symbol beside them. Let's click on Raleigh, and you can see the content. It's constantly being updated. And this is just an executive summary of our job growth, our home prices, and all of that. But let's fly through this. We've got population and income. Again, this is great for those retail type industries. Population growth, per capita income for this area. I can go to business growth. Now, this is really important because it has the number of establishments and the growth in terms of jobs. So I could sort it this way. Restaurants, these are the biggest industries, and then their job growth, or I could sort it by growth if I wanted to. This is a good place to try to decide maybe to create a niche. Like in Raleigh, there are 55 warehousing and storage locations and almost 5,000 jobs. Maybe that would be a good niche, for example. But this is a very powerful tool, and you can export it to CSV if you want to. And then I can go to employment data. And again, this is a time saver, hopefully, for your valuation report. Because, Jim, do you ever put this data into your valuation report? I'm sure you could get it yourself, but maybe this is an easy way to save time.
Yeah, I do. And actually, it really saved me here. I don't know, 2-3 weeks ago or so. I was struggling to get information, and you guys did a real good job here in this one market that I was looking at, and I was able to I didn't pull it all out and put it in, but I got enough out to put things in my report. So and document my file. So that was a good thing.
Oh, that's just great. And again, I think a business valuation expert should be like an economist too. I think valuation experts need to know their local economy and be able to reel off the statistics.
Yeah, well, as you know, it's part of our job is part of the process is to understand how the company interacts with both local, regional, national, and international aspects of things, and so this is incredibly helpful for that purpose. To me, again, if you've got it listed, it's really helpful, and there's a good amount of coverage here with the locations geographically, and I suspect you're going to be expanding those as things go on.
Well, we're going to be expanding the data most likely, but we've about covered the whole country, and that's maybe more cities. I mean, we've got between 350, 375 cities.
Yeah, that's what I'm saying. Maybe
add more cities. Yes,
yeah,
we could.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah,
right.
You're right. And then we've got business.
How would you work on? So if we're working in an area in a city that really isn't covered, do you have the ability, if we reached out, where you all could help us come up with information?
Good question. So one is we have just about every county in the United States, so that you could go to the county data instead of the city data. But every page on Vertical IQ has this feedback and support button right here, and it's on every page. You click on this, and this goes essentially straight to our research team. There's a gatekeeper, but when you have specific questions, our industry research team, somebody will get back to you and give you suggestions
Good.
and give you help. Like, let's say we don't cover an industry. You're like, do you have anything on Windows? I think we do, but
Yeah.
well, actually, we don't have a profile on that, but here's some information, right?
Yeah. Good.
So yes.
Couple things here, pretty quickly. One question that's come up. You mentioned LexisNexis enhancement. Do you
Yep.
have any other planned enhancements to the product? And this wrapped, I think we can put all three of these together. Would it be possible to get a sample report of our choosing as a way to print out and better evaluate how the product might be best incorporated into our practice? And the last question is the analysis all auditable? Is the underlying data available, which is behind the graphs and numbers?
Yeah. So let's do the answers in reverse. Yes. So every graph should have the source. So we have source. It's in italics and it's kind of small, but every piece of data should have the source unless it's our own source. And you see here, this is from the Federal Housing Finance Agency. So that's that. The other question was, I believe, is can you have a free report to evaluate vertical IQ? And I think the answer is yes. But if you work with BVR, they have their own process for bringing you on to vertical IQ. But my best guess is they would be amicable and very happy to provide you with a report. And if we haven't given them permission to do that, we certainly will, I guess, because you need to be able to evaluate it before you buy it. So that's not a problem at all. We also sell them for $99 on our website. So you could buy one report for $99 on our website, FYI. Mm-hmm. And then the last question was, what was the last question again, Jim?
It was where you mentioned LexisNexis, and what other enhancements do you have coming?
Yeah, so LexisNexis, we have a partnership that we're launching very soon, like literally within a day or two. The announcement's coming. And what it is that we now have access for our users for no additional cost for in our news section, paywalled articles. So like, for example, let's just say there's a trade magazine and it costs $1,000 a year in plastics or something like that. Well, those articles are difficult for you to get because you don't have a subscription. But what we're doing is LexisNexis, through our partnership with them, enables us to provide them to you. Now, not the whole publication, but ones we curate and handpick. And we do curate and handpick news. So that's just one example. But we're working on all sorts of very important enhancements. We're creating more and more industry data graphically. So what are the drivers to a particular industry? Instead of presenting and just writing about that data, we're now starting to provide more and more drivers. And those are going to be graphs right into the report. And that's coming very soon as well. So yeah, we're constantly upgrading the profiles. Other questions, Jim?
No, I think that's it. We're sitting at about 2:10. Maybe we could take maybe a couple more minutes and maybe try to wrap it around 2:15. Do you think?
Yeah, I think so. I'm about finished up here. You can see if you're evaluating a company and it has to do with home prices, just because of the nature of the industry, maybe it's an HVAC company that does residential, something like that. You can see we have a lot about housing, home starts and all that. And then of course, this is basically a forecast for home prices for Raleigh. And we've got this for the others as well. And then there's web links to get more information. So you can see there's a lot of economic data in vertical IQ under local economies. And of course, you can set your own city here. So when you come in, you always have that right at your fingertip. But, that's about it. I think that really what I wanted to do is get you a good feel for vertical IQ and, some of the content. I think that with Jim being here, it was incredibly valuable to hear his perspective because he really is the expert and knows how to use this data. So I think he's done a tremendous job of conveying the best practices. Other questions or comments?
I think we're questioned out, and at least from the participants and whatnot. And yeah, I'm excited about your product, and I'm glad to hear that you're going to continue to work on its enhancing the product as well.
Oh, absolutely. That is, we try to make 2 to 3 very important enhancements per year. And the LexisNexis one is certainly a big one, and it's coming very soon.
Yeah.
I did see there was one question. Yeah, it was the question the gentleman was trying to figure out about the 6 forces. And I apologize. I didn't know what that is. I'll guarantee you our head of industry research, which is one of my co-founders, he's gonna have my hide when I tell him. He's gonna go, Bobby, that is this, you know that. And so I'm the one that should know that. So please forgive me.
I'll also mention that BVR's folks are well versed in on this platform. Regina Hoddle, who works with my firm, early on, I was struggling with something, and she got, and I reached out to her, and she sent me exactly what I needed within minutes of what I needed. So the BVR folks are on top of this as well. So I just mentioned that to our listeners. Reach out to your rep, and they can help you through this.
Wonderful. Yeah. Good tip there, Jim. So
if I could just interject on the reading page, there's someone asked about getting a demo of a specific industry, and I think on the reading page there's a thing to request a demo, and you'll get a link for a free trial. So I think through all of that, an individual could get something very specific to see off the platform. So terrific.
Good.
Okay. Well, Bobby and Jim, thanks so much. And also on that 6 forces, what as I recall, what that is when he kept saying complementary products, it's kind of outside the industry. So it's taking the competitive analysis a little bit further outside of your actual market and into other markets where there might be complementary products that may compete with yours. So it's an extension of the competitive analysis.
Yes, and I would think credit underwriting and risks is where we discuss that. It's like, what are the indirect substitutes and that kind of thing.
Yeah,
and it is real. So that's a big factor. So thanks for bringing that up.
Yeah. Okay. Well,
Andy, do you want to cover pricing on this at all?
Well,
there's a question that just came up on that.
Well, if you go to the material and link on the thing, you'll see that the pricing. I believe Bobby mentioned there was a $99 single search, and I believe it's around $1,000 for the annual subscription.
Yeah,
in that neighborhood. But if you go to the product page, you'll see all that. It's on there.
Great. All right. Thank you.
And your sales rep will work with you on any pricing issues on that. So thanks for the question. $1,099 a year. I just see. So, but anyway, contact your sales rep for more on that. And in the meantime, thanks so much again, Bobby and Jim, and for the presentation. Great insights. And I want to thank our listeners for attending. And as a reminder, you need to fill out the survey for your CPE credit, and you'll need the code 2510, which is up there on the screen. Please fill out the survey within the next 5 days. It'll only be open for that time period, and after the 5 days, we'll send your CPE certificate by email. And you can find more information on our webinars at bbresources.com/training. Next week, we're going to have a program on valuing portfolios of marketable securities. That'll be Tuesday, November 23rd. Hope to see you then. Until then, thanks for listening. Thanks again, Bobby and Jim. Have a great rest of the day, and you may now disconnect. Thanks so much.
Thank you.